Senator Cruz, how are you, sir?
Mark, I'm doing terrific. How are you tonight?
I'm doing terrific, but you know, Ted, before I have dinner, I'm never doing 100%, if you understand what I mean. Now,
I understand.
These bogus attacks, these bogus indictments, you know, it's really quite sickening to watch people go on TV who have a legal background.
Yep.
Discussing the Espionage Act, my first motion in front of a judge would be, that's the wrong law. That law doesn't apply. Didn't apply to Lyndon Johnson. Didn't apply to Hillary Clinton, even though she wasn't a president. And the criminalization of a records system, a records dispute, is not permitted. What is your view?
Look, I think that's exactly right. And what we're seeing is an obvious double standard. When it comes to a prosecution for essentially the failure to safely secured classified documents, if they want to bring a case against Donald Trump, they need to be prepared to bring a case against Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton and just about every former president that's ever served. And it is obvious they don't want to do that because Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton are on their team, and they're bringing this against Donald Trump because they hate Trump. Merrick Garland came into office intending to indict Donald Trump, and it had nothing to do with the facts, with the law, with his conduct. It had everything to do with the fact that they hate him and are willing to use the Department of Justice and the machinery of law enforcement to go after him and to try to destroy him. And I'll tell you, a big part of the reason why is they don't trust the voters. This is a profoundly anti-democratic move. It is a move against democracy because Merrick Garland is doing this because he's worried the voters will choose to vote for Donald Trump, and he wants to try to have DOJ take that option away.
And you have Eric Holder, who's announced after Swalwell Adam Schiff did, that even if Trump's elected, we should impeach him again. I mean, what is this?
Well, that's 100% certainty. They'll keep impeaching him and impeaching him and impeaching him because they have no respect for the rule of law. And look, one of the bizarre dynamics that happened, Trump broke the Democrat Party. They're just, they foam at the mouth when they see him. And it's also what justifies in their minds why they're willing to lie, why they're willing to cheat and steal, why they're willing to create fabricated counterfeit documents and submit them to a federal court, as the Assistant General Counsel of the FBI did in the Russiagate nonsense, because they've convinced themselves Trump is Adolf Hitler. And so, therefore, everything is justified in pursuit of going after the evil one. And it really is, it's sad. You and I both are alums of the Department of Justice, and the absolute corruption of DOJ and the FBI is enormously harmful, and it's sad, and it's unfair to the thousands of principled men and women at DOJ and the FBI who want to serve our nation, who are angry at those institutions being turned into political weapons.
Mm-hmm. Now, conversely, we have Joe Biden. There's enough predicates there to appoint a special counsel. I mean,
absolutely.
Allegations of bribes, tapes. You've got these shell corporations, multi-millions of dollars, and so forth. It's just crazy. And
it is. And what is broken in the last week is stunning. So in the last week, we've discovered there's a whistleblower who alleges that a senior Burisma executive, the Ukrainian natural gas company, paid Joe Biden a bribe of $5 million in exchange for official action. We're told that the FBI prepared an FD 1023, the form that is their report, memorializing this confidential informant's information, and this is an informant the FBI had relied on previously. And then just 2 days ago, Chuck Grassley went to the Senate floor, and he told the American people he's the only senator who's read the unredacted version of this FD 1023, and he said it reveals the existence of 17 audio tapes of phone conversations between the senior Burisma executive, and 15 of them with Hunter Biden, 2 of them with Joe Biden directly. As you know, I do every week a podcast called Verdict with Ted Cruz. It's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Today's podcast is a deep dive. It is 45 minutes breaking down the evidence that Joe Biden personally took a $5 million bribe. And what is stunning and infuriating is DOJ and the FBI are stonewalling.
We have with us Senator Ted Kennedy. Ted, you were talking about Ted Kennedy, for God's sakes. Ted Cruz. Have you ever been called Ted Kennedy before?
I think that is truly a first, and I promise I won't take you driving by any bodies of water.
Do you remember the other time I confused Ted's? You probably don't remember when I was calling Ted E., my cardiologist, and I called you. You remember this?
I do.
You don't remember. It was embarrassing for me. And I said, Teddy, and you're listening, said, who is this? And then you hung up, and I called again. I said, Teddy, who is this? I hung up again. It was you, and I thought it was Teddy, my cardiologist. But nonetheless, you're not a part-time cardiologist, are you?
Only on alternate weekends.
Because I could use one. Anyway, you were telling us the story. By the way, podcast. Why do they call it a podcast? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Know.
I guess.
Me neither.
You're a big podcaster. You should know. I guess the thing you shoot out is a pod, I guess, that you're casting into the world.
Why would they call me a broadcaster? I'm a guy. I don't understand that one either, to be perfectly honest with you. Anyway, I don't want to get you in trouble. So, so you're talking about the Biden crime family. You've got this bribery. You've got Senator Grassley is like the most careful senator when it comes to these things. And and we had to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Well, he's revealed that there are these 17 phone calls that are recorded. And so yesterday, the deputy director of the FBI was testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee, and I pressed him on it. And I asked him, is it correct that the FBI's Form 1023 reveals credible evidence that the President of the United States, Joe Biden, accepted a $5 million bribe from a foreign national? And the FBI refused to answer. I said, will you give the Senate Judiciary Committee the FD 1023 so we can examine it? He refused to answer. I asked, is it true that there are 17 voice recordings? He refused to answer. I asked, does the FBI possess the 17 voice recordings? He refused to answer. I asked, will the FBI give to the Senate Judiciary Committee those 17 voice recordings? He refused to answer. And the infuriating thing, Mark, and you know this well, there's no legal barrier to his answering my questions. He's not prohibited from doing so. He just chose not to. He just smugly sat there and said, I'm not going to answer your questions. And it's because the leadership at the FBI has convinced themselves that they are utterly unaccountable, that they owe nothing to Congress, they owe nothing to the American people, that they are above reproach. And that arrogance, that they happily are stonewalling for Joe Biden and the White House and covering up what is now serious and growing evidence of official corruption by Joe Biden.
And you're so right about this. I mean, where does an agency of the government, I don't care what they are called, get away with this? I mean, if you don't have congressional oversight, then you don't have anything. Then you have an all-power executive. Same with these executive orders. Same with these indictments. They're answerable to nobody. At least that's what they think. And do you think in some ways we're in a, as I do, but you don't have to agree with me, that we live in a post-constitutional America?
Absolutely. Look, this administration doesn't care what the Constitution provides. You look at the leftists that they're confirming to the federal court. Today, these Senate Democrats confirmed a judge in New York, a guy named Dale Ho, who said he described himself as a, quote, wild-eyed liberal, wild-eyed leftist, who sees discrimination everywhere he looks. He also described how he wakes up every day motivated by his hatred for conservatives. And, you know, I asked my colleagues on Judiciary Committee, I said, look, there are actually some Republicans in New York. If you're a Republican and you end up in this judge's court, how can you possibly feel you can get a fair shake if he's told you he got up that morning motivated by his hatred for conservatives? Well, the Senate Democrats just rubber-stamped the nomination, and he's now a federal judge in New York, thanks to Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden.
That is amazing. Were there any Democrats who voted against this guy?
Joe Manchin was the only one.
One Democrat.
One.
They pretend to have moderates in there. There aren't any moderates there, are there?
There are no moderates left, and it was a reaction to Trump. I mean, they have handed the agenda over to the extremes in the party, and you look at this Trump indictment, and sadly, you have to say which Trump indictment, because there are now two Trump indictments, like there were two Trump impeachments. There may be more Trump indictments, and it is their hatred in their mind justifies anything they want to do. And look, my view, we've gone over 200 years in our nation's history. We've never had a former president indicted. Banana republics indict and prosecute their predecessors. The United States doesn't. And I think the threshold to prosecute a president or a former president should be very high, exceptionally high. But you know what would clear that threshold? Credible evidence that the president accepted a $5 million bribe from a foreign national. As you know, as your listeners know, the Constitution explicitly specifies bribery as one of the grounds for impeachment. Treason, bribery, other high crimes or misdemeanors. And if Joe Biden is guilty of this, he should be impeached, he should be removed from office, he should be prosecuted, and he should go to prison. And by the way, you and I don't know if he's guilty of this, but the one person who does know is Joe Biden. And if he's innocent, he should call for the release of the 1023. He should call for the release of the 17 audio recordings, because he should want to clear his name and prove he's innocent.
Does he act like an innocent man?
Of course not. He laughs and says, "Where's the money?" Which, by the way, is the same thing Al Capone said. And he knows the corporate media will cover up for him. All of the corporate media has completely ignored this story. They do not want the American people to know. And so the Democrats and the FBI and DOJ are all happy stonewalling for him because they know the media refuses to do its job.
Mm-hmm. You don't have to name the Republican senator or senators. Did any of these Republicans in the Senate vote for that guy you were just talking about who said he hates conservatives?
So thankfully, no. We held all Republicans together, which means just one more Democrat, if they'd flipped, we would have defeated this judge.
Mm-hmm.
But we also we're in the process of taking up another judge who is a woman who said at Princeton University, police officers kill an unarmed black man every single day, which is a flat-out lie. It is wildly untrue. It bears no resemblance to the truth. All the police groups have come out against her. The Fraternal Order of Police, she is the most anti-police judicial nominee Joe Biden's put forward. And what happened? The Democrats, again, party line, voted for cloture, voted to move her nomination forward.
You know, it's very different than the Republican Party, isn't it? These people really do not think for themselves, whether it's in the House or the Senate, whether it's now or 20 years ago. The Republicans are all over the map, good, bad, and indifferent. But the Democrats are all one way. Obviously you see that. Do you find that incredibly frustrating?
It is bizarre, and it's just they're collectivists. They believe in following orders, and they just follow orders mindlessly. I have turned to my judiciary colleagues over and over again. I'm like, what is wrong with you? You're voting for people who are true zealots in judiciary. Two other judges we haven't voted for on the Senate floor yet, but two other judicial nominees. One is a woman out of Washington State who didn't know what Article 5 of the Constitution is. That's how you amend the Constitution. And even worse, she didn't know what Article 2 of the Constitution is,
Jeez.
which establishes the presidency and the executive branch. She, by the way, is nominated to be an Article 3 judge. I assume she doesn't know what that is either.
Mm-hmm.
Every Democrat on Judiciary voted for her. And then there's another judge nominated in California who wrote an academic white paper arguing that convicted sex offenders, pedophiles, should be allowed to live next door to elementary schools and daycare centers. And I mean, I put the quote up in the committee and I said, look, I don't care how blue your state is. Maybe it's New York or California or Vermont. I promise you, if you ask your constituents, should pedophiles live next to a daycare center, they're going to say, hell no. And yet every one of the Democrats, like lemmings, just says, we will follow orders, and they all voted for on the committee.
Your election is up, right?
Yes, I am running for re-election in 2024, and we're expecting a serious fight. Chuck Schumer has said I'm the number one target for him and for the Democrats of a Republican they want to take out. My last re-elect in 2018 at the time was the most expensive Senate race in U.S. history. We were outraised and outspent 3-1. The Democrats more than doubled Democrat turnout in the state of Texas. They drove it from 1.8 million to 4 million. We leaned in, we saw that, and we drove Republican turnout from 2.8 million to 4.2 million, but I won by 200,000 votes at a more than 8 million votes cast, a 2.6% margin. They've made clear they're going to spend $100 million coming after me. And so I want to ask your listeners, go to tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org. We got to have the resources to defend Texas and to stand up to the wild-eyed leftists that are trying to take me out.
Let's make sure that's on all our social sites, Mr. Producer, and you are going to need to be on this show more often. I'm just saying, Ted, as a practical matter. And who does it look like they want to run against you? Do you know?
So the likely nominee is a guy named Colin Allred, who is a congressman from Dallas. He was elected in 2018. He's a former NFL player. He's very, very liberal. His first 4 years in Congress, he voted 100% with Nancy Pelosi, literally did not deviate on a single vote. Talk about obeying orders. It was as if he walked in, handed his voting card to Pelosi, and just went home and said, you know, when you're voting, whatever's good for San Francisco, that's what Dallas, Texas wants too. That's who they propped up. In the first 36 hours he's in the race, he has raised over $2 million. And look, at some level, it's not rocket science. If you're a Democrat, after Donald Trump, there is no one in the country you want to beat more than me. And so every socialist in New York or Chicago and San Francisco, they're going online and giving to Allred, which is why we need freedom-loving Americans to say, listen, do you want a senator who fights to defend you, who fights to hold the FBI and the DOJ accountable, who fights to defend the Constitution? Because I can tell you the Democrats sure want to get me out of the Senate because I'm leading the fight against what they're doing.
That would be such a disaster. Such a disaster. So we're going to keep an eye on this more than we have, and we'll have you back.
It is a very real and very serious race.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And so if people want to support you again, where do they go?
The website is tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org.
All right, Ted Cruz. We're all for you, buddy. We'll keep an eye on this. Thank you, and take care of yourself.
Thank you, my friend. God bless.
And God bless you, too.